Is it possible that the very people you hold closest, the ones whose presence you crave or feel bound to, are the unseen architects of your deepest emotional wounds? What if the comfort of closeness has become a dangerous illusion, a familiar warmth that masks a slow, corrosive burn on your spirit? The devastating truth is that emotional bonds, designed by nature to nurture and protect, can become twisted into conduits for pain, confusion, and a profound erosion of self. This isn't about dramatic betrayals that make headlines, but often about the subtle, everyday interactions within relationships that leave you feeling drained, diminished, or perpetually off balance. Understanding this paradox, that proximity can breed pain, and love can become entangled with toxicity, is the first courageous step toward healing and reclaiming the vibrant, authentic life you deserve. Too close, too hurt. Healing Toxic Emotional Bonds, written and published by Stealth Psychology. Chapter 1. Recognizing Toxic Attachments. Have you ever found yourself in a relationship, whether with a family member, friend, or partner, where the connection feels less like a comforting anchor and more like a heavy chain, one that drains your energy and dims your inner light, yet you feel inexplicably bound? Imagine being tethered to someone whose moods dictate your own, whose approval you constantly seek but rarely secure, or whose subtle criticisms chip away at your self-esteem day by day. This perplexing and painful experience is often the hallmark of a toxic attachment. The problem is that these unhealthy bonds are frequently disguised by layers of history, obligation, love, or even intermittent kindness, making them incredibly difficult to identify for what they truly are. You might find yourself making excuses for the other person's behavior, blaming yourself for the discord, or clinging to fleeting good moments as proof that the relationship isn't that bad. This confusion is a key feature of toxic attachments. It keeps you stuck in a cycle of hope and disappointment, unable to see the pervasive pattern of emotional harm. The constant anxiety, the feeling of walking on eggshells, the erosion of your confidence, and the pervasive sense of being misunderstood or undervalued are all silent screams from a spirit caught in an unhealthy emotional entanglement. The transformative solution begins with the courageous act of turning on the light of awareness, learning to recognize the subtle and overt signs that an attachment has become toxic. This isn't about labeling people as toxic in a simplistic way, but rather about understanding the dynamics of a relationship that consistently undermines your well-being. The core idea is that clarity is power. Once you can clearly see the patterns and characteristics of a toxic attachment, you are no longer a passive victim of its effects, but an empowered observer capable of making informed choices. The profound benefit of this recognition is that it's the indispensable first step toward healing and liberation. It allows you to stop blaming yourself and to start understanding the unhealthy mechanics at play. Picture yourself being able to identify these dynamics with a newfound objectivity, like an emotional detective uncovering clues that finally make sense of your long-held discomfort. This recognition doesn't magically solve everything, but it breaks the spell of confusion and denial, opening the door to healthier ways of relating and, if necessary, detaching. To begin this journey of recognition, a crucial first step is to pay close attention to your emotional and physical state before, during, and after interactions with the person in question. Do you consistently feel drained, anxious, irritable, small, or on edge when you anticipate seeing them while you are with them or after they leave? While all relationships have ups and downs, a toxic attachment is characterized by a persistent pattern of negative emotional fallout. For example, if you find yourself tensing up and your heart rate increasing every time a particular family member's name appears on your phone, or if you feel utterly exhausted and self-critical after every encounter with a certain friend, these are significant indicators. Contrast this with how you feel around people with whom you have genuinely healthy, supportive connections. Those relationships typically leave you feeling energized, understood, and respected, even if you discuss difficult topics. Consider a scenario where you're preparing for a weekly dinner with a parent. If your primary feeling is dread, accompanied by a mental rehearsal of all the ways you might be criticized or made to feel inadequate, this points towards a toxic dynamic rather than a nurturing one. Secondly, examine the balance of give and take in the relationship. Healthy attachments are characterized by reciprocity, mutual support, and a generally equitable exchange of energy and care. Toxic attachments, however, are often strikingly one-sided. You might find yourself constantly giving your time, energy, emotional support, resources, while the other person primarily takes, offers little in return, or even makes you feel guilty for having needs of your own. For instance, you have a friend who only calls when they need something, a favor, a loan, or someone to vent to for hours, but is consistently unavailable or dismissive when you're going through a tough time or simply want to share good news. They might masterfully turn the conversation back to themselves or subtly diminish your experiences. This pattern of imbalance, where your needs are consistently ignored or minimized, is a red flag. Another example could be a romantic partner who expects you to cater to all their emotional needs, celebrate all their achievements, and manage all household responsibilities, while offering minimal emotional support, appreciation, or shared effort in return, perhaps even criticizing your attempts as not good enough. Another key insight for recognizing toxic attachments lies in observing patterns of control, criticism, and manipulation. Does the other person frequently try to control your decisions, your time, or your relationships with others? Are you subjected to constant criticism, whether overt or disguised as jokes or helpful advice, that leaves you feeling inadequate? Do they use manipulative tactics like guilt-tripping, stonewalling, the silent treatment, gaslighting, making you doubt your own sanity or perception of reality, or playing the victim to get their way? For example, a partner might subtly isolate you from your friends and family by making negative comments about them or creating drama whenever you want to spend time with others, thereby increasing your dependence on them. Or a boss might consistently take credit for your ideas while publicly pointing out your minor flaws, keeping you insecure and less likely to challenge their authority. Consider the friend who, when you express a differing opinion, says, "You're always so sensitive," or "You're just imagining things," making you doubt your own feelings and judgment. This is a classic gaslighting maneuver designed to undermine your confidence and maintain their control over the narrative. Furthermore, notice if the relationship stifles your personal growth and authenticity. In a healthy bond, you feel encouraged to be yourself, to pursue your interests, and to evolve as an individual. In a toxic attachment, you might feel like you have to shrink yourself, hide aspects of your personality, or abandon your dreams to maintain the relationship or avoid conflict. The other person may react with jealousy, ridicule, or sabotage when you try to grow or succeed. For instance, you share your excitement about starting a new hobby or career path, and your loved one responds with disinterest, skepticism, "Are you sure you can handle that?" or by subtly undermining your confidence. Well, it's not like you've ever stuck with anything before. This lack of support or active discouragement can be a clear sign that the attachment is unhealthy because your growth threatens the existing dynamic, which may rely on your staying small or dependent. You might find yourself consistently choosing activities or even dressing in ways that you know will please the other person, rather than expressing your true self, because the cost of their disapproval feels too high. This self-censorship is a significant toll of toxic attachments. Recognizing these signs is an act of profound self-compassion. It's not about pointing fingers, but about acknowledging your own experience and the impact these relational dynamics have had on you. It's the moment you stop telling yourself, "It's not that bad," and start affirming, "This hurts, and it's not okay." This clarity is the bedrock upon which you can begin to understand the deeper complexities of such bonds, particularly why being so close to someone can cause such profound and persistent pain. Now that we've begun to illuminate the telltale signs of toxic attachments, it's crucial to delve deeper into the emotional experience itself. Why does being in close proximity to individuals with whom we share these damaging bonds often feel so uniquely painful and debilitating? Understanding this is key to validating our feelings and moving towards healing. In our next chapter, we will explore the pain of proximity. We'll examine the emotional and psychological toll that close yet toxic relationships can take, helping you to understand the often invisible wounds they inflict and why sometimes the people we are closest to can hurt us the most. Remember to subscribe to Stealth Psychology, give this video a like, and comment with your personal opinions or suggestions for channel development. Chapter 2. The Pain of Proximity. Why is it that the people we are often physically or emotionally closest to, family members, long-term partners, or lifelong friends, can sometimes be the source of our most profound and persistent emotional pain? Imagine the confusion and heartache of feeling consistently wounded, misunderstood, or diminished by someone who, according to societal norms or your own deep-seated hopes, should be a source of comfort, support, and love. This paradox, where closeness breeds not contentment, but chronic distress, is the central theme of the pain of proximity in toxic attachments. The problem is that when a bond is both close and toxic, the emotional damage is often amplified and more insidious. Unlike the hurt caused by a stranger or a casual acquaintance, the wounds inflicted by those within our inner circle cut deeper because they violate our fundamental need for safety, trust, and acceptance from those we are most intimately connected with. We might find ourselves trapped in a cycle of expecting love and receiving pain, leading to a state of emotional dissonance where our hearts long for connection while our instincts scream for protection. This ongoing internal conflict can lead to chronic stress, anxiety, depression, and a deeply fractured sense of self, as the very people meant to build us up are instead, often subtly, tearing us down. The transformative solution lies in validating this specific type of pain, understanding its unique mechanisms, and acknowledging that the hurt is real and significant precisely because of the closeness. It's about recognizing that your emotional suffering is not a sign of weakness or oversensitivity, but a natural human response to being in a chronically invalidating, critical, or emotionally unsafe close relationship. The core idea is that proximity in toxic bonds doesn't offer the expected shield against harm. Instead, it provides more frequent and targeted opportunities for that harm to occur, often under the guise of love or familiarity. The profound benefit of truly understanding and validating this pain is that it allows you to stop minimizing your suffering and begin the process of genuine emotional healing. It empowers you to see the situation with clarity, freeing you from self-blame and enabling you to consider what changes are necessary for your well-being. Picture yourself finally giving your pain a voice, acknowledging its legitimacy without apology. This validation is like a soothing balm on a raw wound. It doesn't make the wound disappear instantly, but it stops the agonizing self-invalidation that often accompanies it. To begin to understand and process the pain of proximity, a crucial first step is to acknowledge the impact of broken expectations and betrayed trust. In close relationships, we naturally have certain expectations for love, respect, loyalty, understanding, and emotional safety. When these fundamental expectations are repeatedly violated by someone we are deeply attached to, the pain is immense. It's not just the specific hurtful act, but the shattering of a core belief about what that relationship should provide. For example, a child naturally expects unconditional love and protection from a parent. If that parent is consistently critical, emotionally unavailable, or even abusive, the child experiences not only the direct pain of those actions, but also the profound pain of a world that doesn't feel safe or loving in the way it should. This can carry into adulthood, where interactions with that parent continue to trigger deep-seated feelings of betrayal and hurt. Or consider a long-term romantic partnership, where one partner discovers a pattern of deception. The pain isn't just about the lies themselves, but the destruction of trust, which is the bedrock of intimacy. The closer the bond, the more devastating the breach of trust. Secondly, recognize how familiarity and history can become weapons in toxic proximity. People who know us intimately, our vulnerabilities, our past traumas, our insecurities, can, if the attachment is toxic, use this knowledge to inflict maximum emotional damage, sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously. A well-aimed comment that triggers an old wound, a criticism disguised as knowing what's best for you, or the dredging up of past mistakes during arguments can be incredibly painful because it comes from someone who knows exactly where to strike. For instance, A sibling who knows you've always struggled with self-confidence might make joking remarks about your abilities right before an important presentation, activating all your deepest fears. Or a spouse, in a moment of anger, might bring up your most sensitive personal failing, knowing it will silence or devastate you. The history shared, which should be a source of comfort and shared understanding, instead becomes a repository of ammunition. This exploitation of intimacy is a uniquely painful aspect of toxic close relationships. You expect those who know you best to protect your vulnerabilities, not to target them. A third important insight is to understand the concept of ambient abuse, or chronic emotional unavailability in close quarters. Sometimes the pain of proximity isn't about overt, dramatic acts of aggression, but about a pervasive, ongoing atmosphere of negativity, criticism, emotional coldness, or neglect. Living in such an environment is like being exposed to a low-grade emotional toxin day in and day out. It might not be one single event you can point to, but the cumulative effect is deeply damaging to your self-esteem and emotional health. Imagine living with a partner who rarely offers praise or affection, frequently sighs with disappointment, subtly criticizes your choices, or responds to your bids for connection with silence or disinterest. There may be no outright yelling or name-calling, but the constant lack of positive affirmation and the subtle undercurrent of disapproval creates a deeply painful and lonely existence, despite the physical closeness. This chronic emotional deprivation can make you feel invisible, unlovable, or perpetually inadequate, and because it's so subtle, you might even doubt if you have a right to feel hurt. Furthermore, consider the profound impact on your identity and self-perception when toxic attachments are close. The people we are closest to often act as mirrors, reflecting back to us who we are. If that mirror is distorted by their own issues, negativity, or manipulative tendencies, the reflection we see of ourselves will also be distorted. If you are constantly told by a close family member that you are too sensitive, not smart enough, or difficult, you may begin to internalize these labels, especially if the messages start in childhood. This can lead to a diminished sense of self-worth and a belief that you are inherently flawed. The pain here is not just about hurtful words, but about the insidious way these messages can shape your core identity when they come from someone whose opinion, due to proximity, you are conditioned to value. For example, if a parent consistently favored another sibling and subtly communicated that you were somehow less deserving, you might carry a deep-seated belief of being second best into all areas of your adult life, constantly striving for a validation that feels unattainable. This identity wound, inflicted through long-term toxic proximity, is incredibly painful and difficult to heal until it is brought into conscious awareness. Acknowledging these layers of pain, the broken expectations, the weaponized familiarity, the ambient abuse, and the identity distortion, is not about dwelling in victimhood. It is about an honest assessment of your emotional reality. It's about giving yourself permission to grieve the relationship you wished you had, and to acknowledge the real harm caused by the one you experienced. This validation is a powerful act of self-love and the true starting point for reclaiming your emotional well-being. It is the understanding that yes, being this close has indeed caused this much hurt, and that your pain is a legitimate signal that something needs to change. Once we've acknowledged the profound and often hidden pain that arises from being too close within toxic bonds, we can then begin to examine the underlying mechanics that keep us tethered to these painful dynamics. What are the repetitive dances of dysfunction, the invisible scripts that we and the other person play out time and time again, ensuring that the hurt continues? In our next chapter, we will explore patterns that keep you stuck. We'll uncover the common cyclical patterns of interaction and internal belief systems that perpetuate toxic attachments, helping you to see how these cycles operate and why they are so incredibly hard to break on your own. Remember to subscribe to Stealth Psychology, give this video a like, and comment with your personal opinions or suggestions for channel development. Chapter 3: Patterns that keep you stuck. Why do we find ourselves trapped in the same painful relationship dynamics, replaying familiar scenes of disappointment, frustration, or hurt with certain individuals, almost as if we're caught in an emotional time loop we can't escape. Imagine knowing on some level that an interaction is going to end badly, that a particular person will inevitably say or do something that diminishes you, yet you feel compelled to engage, only to find your premonitions confirmed once again. This recurring nightmare is the reality of being caught in the entrenched patterns that keep toxic attachments alive and thriving. The problem is that these patterns are often deeply ingrained, operating beneath our conscious awareness, and are usually co-created, meaning both parties play a role, even if one person is more overtly toxic. We might be reenacting old childhood dynamics, responding to unconscious beliefs about ourselves and relationships, or simply falling into familiar habits of interaction that, while painful, feel predictable and strangely normal. These cycles can involve idealization, followed by devaluation, intermittent reinforcement, where occasional kindness keeps us hooked, patterns of pursuit and withdrawal, or chronic enabling of unhealthy behavior. Because these patterns are so familiar and often rooted in our earliest attachment experiences, they can feel incredibly difficult to recognize, let alone break, leaving us feeling powerless and stuck. The transformative solution lies in bringing these hidden patterns into the light of conscious awareness, dissecting their components, and understanding the roles we unwittingly play in perpetuating them. It's about becoming an astute observer of your own relational dances, especially those that consistently lead to pain. The core idea is that once you can identify a repeating negative pattern, you gain the power to interrupt it and choose a different response, rather than being an automaton playing out a pre-programmed script. The immense benefit of this is the potential to finally break free from cycles that have perhaps plagued you for years, or even decades. Picture yourself recognizing an old, familiar pattern beginning to unfold with someone, and instead of being swept away by it, you are able to pause, identify your usual role and the predictable outcome, and consciously choose to step out of the dance. This is not just about changing one interaction. It's about fundamentally altering the trajectory of your relational life by refusing to participate in dynamics that no longer serve your well-being. To begin identifying these stuck patterns, the first step is to become a meticulous observer of the sequence of events in your difficult interactions. Think of a recurring painful scenario with a specific person. What usually happens first? What is the trigger? What is your typical response? What is their typical counter-response? What is the usual outcome, and how do you typically feel afterwards? Try to map it out like a flowchart. For example, consider a pattern with an emotionally volatile partner. Step 1. Partner is stressed and becomes critical. Trigger. Step 2. You become defensive and try to explain yourself. Your typical response. Step 3. Partner escalates, becoming more accusatory. Their counter-response. Step 4. You either shut down or escalate back, leading to a big fight or resentful silence. Outcome. Step 5. You feel exhausted, misunderstood, and anxious. Aftermath. By detailing this sequence, you start to see the predictability of the pattern. Another example might be with an overly dependent parent. Parent calls with a minor issue, expressing helplessness. You immediately drop everything to solve it for them. They express temporary relief, but soon another crisis emerges. You feel responsible and slightly resentful, but continue to rescue. This is a clear rescuer-victim pattern. Secondly, explore the underlying beliefs and emotional payoffs, even if they seem negative, that might be keeping you locked into these patterns. Sometimes we stay in familiar cycles, even painful ones, because they fulfill an unconscious need or confirm a deep-seated belief. For instance, if you grew up feeling responsible for a parent's happiness, you might unconsciously seek out partners or friends whom you can fix or rescue, replaying this pattern because the role of caretaker, while burdensome, feels familiar and gives you a false sense of purpose or control. Or, if you have a core belief that you are unlovable, you might be drawn to critical or unavailable partners because their behavior confirms this negative self-perception. A painful but familiar "I knew it" feeling. Consider the pattern of seeking approval from a critical authority figure, perhaps a boss. You work excessively hard, go above and beyond, hoping for a word of praise, the payoff you're seeking. They offer minimal acknowledgement or find another flaw. You redouble your efforts. The underlying belief might be, I must earn love, approval through relentless effort. Identifying these subtle, often unconscious motivations is crucial, as they are the invisible glue holding the pattern together. A third actionable insight is to recognize the role of intermittent reinforcement in keeping you hooked, especially in roller coaster relationships. This is a powerful psychological principle where rewards, like affection, praise, or calm periods, are given unpredictably and inconsistent. This inconsistency makes the behavior, your attempts to get the reward, much more resistant to extinction. If someone is occasionally loving, kind, and attentive amidst periods of criticism, neglect, or volatility, you might cling to those good moments, hoping they will become the norm. This hope keeps you invested and tolerant of the bad behavior. For example, a partner who is often emotionally distant or critical might surprise you with a wonderful date or a heartfelt apology. This reward can feel so intoxicating after a period of deprivation that it effectively resets your tolerance for their negative behavior, making you hope this time it will be different. This pattern is incredibly common in toxic attachments and explains why people stay even when the bad times far outweigh the good. Recognizing this as a manipulative, even if sometimes unintentional dynamic, rather than genuine change, can help you see the pattern for what it is. Furthermore, look for patterns of communication that prevent genuine resolution or intimacy, such as blame shifting, defensiveness, stonewalling, or contempt. These are often referred to as the Four Horsemen by relationship researcher Dr. John Gottman, and they are strong predictors of relationship breakdown. If your interactions are characterized by one person always blaming the other, it's always your fault, both parties becoming immediately defensive when concerns are raised, one person shutting down and refusing to communicate, stonewalling, or expressions of disrespect and disdain, contempt like eye-rolling or sneering, then you are caught in a destructive communication pattern. For example, you try to discuss how your friend's constant lateness makes you feel disrespected. Instead of acknowledging your feeling, they get defensive. I'm so busy, you have no idea, or blame shift. Well, you chose this busy restaurant. The issue is never resolved, and you're left feeling unheard. This pattern ensures that problems fester and genuine connection is impossible. The stuckness comes from the inability to break through these defensive walls and have a constructive conversation. Understanding these patterns, the sequences, the underlying beliefs, the intermittent reinforcement, and the destructive communication styles is like being given a map of your own prison. It doesn't magically open the doors, but it shows you where the locks are and how they operate. It takes courage to look at these dynamics honestly, especially our own part in them, but it is an absolutely essential step. Without this clarity, any attempts to change the situation will likely be superficial or temporary. You might change partners or friends, only to find yourself replaying similar painful scenarios, because the underlying template within you remains unchanged. This deep recognition is the precursor to truly effective change. With a clearer understanding of the recurring, painful patterns that keep us ensnared in toxic attachments, the path forward begins to illuminate. Recognizing the dance is one thing. Learning new steps, and more importantly, building the personal stage upon which a healthier dance can occur, is the next vital endeavor. How do we begin to create a sense of safety and respect for ourselves when these patterns have eroded our very foundations? In our next chapter, we will delve into boundaries that heal deeply. We'll explore how to establish and maintain boundaries that are not just defensive walls, but active agents of healing, helping you to protect your energy, reclaim your self-respect, and begin to cultivate relationships based on true mutual regard. Remember to subscribe to Stealth Psychology, give this video a like, and comment with your personal opinions or suggestions for channel development. Chapter 4. Boundaries that heal deeply. What if the invisible fences you build around your emotional garden could do more than just keep out unwanted intrusions, but could actively nourish the soil within, allowing for vibrant new growth where old wounds once lay barren? Imagine creating a personal sanctuary, not of rigid walls that isolate, but of clear, respectful demarcations that communicate your worth and protect your peace, fostering an environment where your truest self can finally flourish. This isn't merely about saying no. It's about cultivating a profound internal and external clarity that acts as a balm to the hurt sustained in toxic attachments. The common problem for those emerging from or still entangled in such bonds is often a deep-seated fear or uncertainty about setting boundaries. We may worry that asserting our limits will provoke anger, lead to abandonment, or be dismissed as selfish, especially if we've been conditioned to prioritize others' feelings over our own. We might have tried setting boundaries in the past, only to have them ignored or trampled, leading to a sense of hopelessness. This difficulty is compounded by the fact that in toxic dynamics, boundaries are often perceived by the other party as a threat to their control or to the established unhealthy equilibrium, making the process feel daunting and fraught with potential conflict. The transformative solution lies in understanding that boundaries, when established with mindful intention and self-compassion, are not instruments of conflict, but profound agents of healing. They are an essential expression of self-respect and a prerequisite for any healthy relationship, including the one you have with yourself. The core idea is that clearly defined and consistently maintained boundaries create the necessary safety and space for emotional wounds to mend. They stop the ongoing injury by limiting exposure to toxic behaviors and create a container for your inner work. The immense benefit of this approach is not just protection from further harm, but the active cultivation of an environment where your self-esteem can be rebuilt, your emotional energy can be replenished, and your authentic voice can emerge. Picture your boundaries as the clear, clean banks of a river, guiding the flow of relational energy in a way that is healthy and sustainable, preventing the floods of overwhelm or the droughts of neglect that characterize toxic attachments. This creates a space where you can finally breathe, heal, and grow. To begin establishing boundaries that heal deeply, the first crucial step is to connect with your intrinsic worth and your fundamental right to emotional and psychological safety. Before you can effectively set a boundary with someone else, you must first believe, deep down, that you are worthy of having your limits respected. Many who have been in toxic attachments suffer from diminished self-esteem, internalizing the message that their needs don't matter. Therefore, part of this initial work is internal. Affirm to yourself daily that you deserve to be treated with respect, that your feelings are valid, and that it is okay to prioritize your well-being. For example, if you've been in a friendship where your friend consistently belittles your achievements with jokes, the internal boundary work begins with affirming, "My accomplishments are valid, and I deserve to have them acknowledged respectfully, or at least not undermined." This internal conviction provides the necessary foundation of strength from which external boundaries can be communicated. You might reflect on past situations where you felt your worth was dismissed and consciously tell yourself, "That was not okay, and I am committed to protecting myself from that kind of treatment going forward." Once this internal sense of worthiness is being cultivated, the next principle is to clearly define what specific behaviors are no longer acceptable to you and what you need instead for the relationship to feel safe, if it is to continue or transform. Be as specific as possible. This isn't about controlling the other person, but about defining what you will and won't participate in. For instance, if a family member frequently resorts to yelling during disagreements, your boundary might be, "I will no longer participate in conversations where voices are raised. If you start yelling, I will calmly state that I need to pause the discussion until we can both speak respectfully." This is clear, specific, and focused on your action. Another example, if a partner tends to make unilateral decisions about shared finances, causing you stress, your boundary might be, "I need us to make all significant financial decisions together after a thorough discussion. I will not agree to expenditures that haven't been mutually decided upon." This clarity helps you to identify when a boundary is being crossed and what action you need to take. Write these down for yourself if it helps to solidify them in your mind. A third essential insight is to start small and practice consistency. especially if setting boundaries is new or challenging for you. You don't have to tackle the most difficult person or situation first. Begin with lower stakes interactions or with boundaries that feel a bit easier to implement. Each small success will build your confidence and skill. For example, if you have a habit of always saying yes to every request for your time, start by saying, "Let me check my calendar and get back to you," as a way to give yourself space to decide, and then perhaps declining a small, non-critical request. Consistency is key. Boundaries are not effective if they are only enforced sporadically. If you state a boundary, e.g., "Please don't call me after 9 p.m. for non-emergencies," and then sometimes allow it to be crossed without consequence, it sends a mixed message and weakens the boundary. Every time you calmly and respectfully uphold your boundary, you are reinforcing it, both to the other person and to yourself. Think of it like training a muscle. It gets stronger with regular, consistent use. Furthermore, when you communicate your boundaries, focus on expressing your needs and limits using I statements rather than accusatory you statements. This minimizes defensiveness in the other person and keeps the focus on your experience and your choices. For example, instead of saying, "You always interrupt me, and it's so rude," you could say, "I feel unheard when I'm interrupted, and I need to be able to finish my thoughts." If a friend consistently unloads their problems on you without asking how you are, instead of, "You only ever talk about yourself," try, "I value our conversations, and I need them to feel more balanced. I'd appreciate it if we could also make space to discuss how I'm doing." This approach is assertive, not aggressive. Be prepared for potential pushback, especially from those accustomed to your previous lack of boundaries. They might test your resolve. Stand firm, calmly reiterating your boundary if necessary, without getting drawn into an argument or needing to over-justify your position. Your boundary is valid simply because it is yours. Finally and crucially, understand that the deepest healing from boundaries comes from the internal shift they represent, a commitment to honoring yourself. Each time you set and maintain a healthy boundary, you are sending a powerful message to your subconscious mind that you matter, that your needs are legitimate, and that you are capable of protecting yourself. This internal validation is profoundly healing, especially after the erosion of self that often occurs in toxic attachments. For instance, deciding not to engage in gossip with a group of colleagues, even if it means feeling temporarily like an outsider, is an act of aligning with your value of integrity. This internal alignment, this choosing of self-respect over temporary social ease, is deeply restorative. The peace that comes from living in accordance with your own defined limits and values becomes its own reward, far outweighing the discomfort of any initial resistance you might encounter. These boundaries become the loving framework within which you can safely nurture your healing and growth. As these healing boundaries begin to take root, creating a safer external environment, it becomes essential to also cultivate a sanctuary within. Protecting yourself from external toxicity is one part of the equation. Learning to create and maintain a rich, resilient inner emotional space is the other, ensuring that your internal world is no longer a battleground, but a place of peace and strength. In our next chapter, we will explore reclaiming inner emotional space. We'll delve into how to clear out the emotional debris left by toxic attachments and how to cultivate an internal environment that supports your well-being, regardless of external circumstances, allowing your true self to breathe and thrive. Remember to subscribe to Stealth Psychology, give this video a like, and comment with your personal opinions or suggestions for channel development. Chapter 5. Reclaiming Inner Emotional Space. Have you ever felt as though your mind is a crowded room, filled with the lingering voices, criticisms, and emotional baggage of others, leaving little space for your own thoughts and feelings to breathe? Imagine trying to find peace or clarity when your internal landscape is cluttered with the residue of toxic attachments, the echoes of past hurts, the anxieties about future interactions, the internalized negative messages that replay on a loop. This mental and emotional overcrowding is a common consequence of enduring unhealthy bonds. The problem is that when our inner emotional space is constantly invaded or occupied by the negativity and unresolved issues stemming from toxic relationships, we lose connection with ourselves. Our capacity for joy, creativity, and presence diminishes. We might feel emotionally exhausted, mentally foggy, or perpetually on guard, as if there's no safe, quiet place within us to retreat to. This lack of inner sanctuary makes it incredibly difficult to heal, as we are continuously re-exposed to the pain, even when the external source of toxicity is not immediately present. It's like trying to recover from an illness in a chaotic, unsanitary environment. The healing process is constantly undermined. The transformative solution lies in actively and intentionally reclaiming your inner emotional space, clearing out the debris of past and present toxic influences, and cultivating a resilient, nurturing internal environment. This is about more than just managing stress. It's about an internal decluttering and redecoration project for your mind and heart. The core idea is that your inner world is your most sacred domain, and you have the power and the right to decide what and who occupies it. By consciously curating this space, you can transform it from a source of turmoil into a wellspring of peace, strength, and authentic self-expression. The profound benefit of this reclamation is a renewed sense of vitality, clarity, and emotional freedom. Picture your mind as a calm, well-tended garden where your own thoughts and feelings are like beautiful flowers, nurtured and respected, and where invasive weeds, negative external influences, are gently but firmly removed before they can take root. This internal harmony allows you to navigate the external world with greater resilience and joy, because you carry your sanctuary within you. To begin reclaiming your inner emotional space, the first essential step is to practice mindful detachment from the thoughts and emotions that don't truly belong to you or serve your well-being. This involves recognizing that many of the negative beliefs you hold about yourself or the anxieties you feel may be internalized messages from toxic attachments rather than objective truths. When a critical thought arises, such as, "I'm not good enough," or a wave of inexplicable sadness washes over you, pause and ask, "Is this truly my voice or an echo of someone else's? Does this feeling originate from my present experience, or is it a residue from past hurts?" For example, if you consistently feel anxious before family gatherings because a particular relative often makes disparaging comments, the anxiety you feel is a learned response to their behavior. By recognizing this anxiety is a signal related to their potential behavior, not an inherent flaw in me, you begin to create distance. You can then choose not to let that anticipated anxiety consume your entire inner space in the lead-up to the event. This is not about suppressing feelings, but about understanding their origin and refusing to let them define your entire internal state. Secondly, engage in practices that help you to process and release trapped or stagnant emotional energy. Toxic attachments often leave us carrying a heavy burden of unresolved emotions: anger, grief, resentment, fear, shame. If these emotions are not processed, they fester within our inner space, contributing to that feeling of being cluttered and overwhelmed. Journaling can be a powerful tool for this. Writing down your feelings without censorship can help you to understand them and release their intensity. Physical activity, whether it's vigorous exercise, gentle stretching, or dancing, can also help to move emotional energy through and out of your body. For instance, if you feel a surge of anger after a frustrating interaction where your boundaries were disrespected, instead of letting it simmer internally, you might go for a run, punch a pillow, or write an angry letter that you don't send to vent those feelings in a safe and constructive way. This clears space for calmer, more constructive emotions to emerge. Similarly, allowing yourself to grieve the losses associated with toxic attachments, the loss of a dream, the loss of a healthy connection, the loss of parts of yourself, is a vital part of clearing inner space. A third crucial principle is to consciously cultivate positive and nurturing inner content. Just as you would choose beautiful and uplifting things to decorate your physical home, you can choose to fill your mind with thoughts, ideas, and experiences that promote peace and well-being. This involves limiting your exposure to negativity, whether it's from social media, news, or draining interactions, and actively seeking out sources of inspiration, joy, and calm. This could mean reading uplifting books, listening to inspiring podcasts or music, spending time in nature, engaging in creative hobbies, or practicing gratitude. For example, if you notice that scrolling through a particular social media feed always leaves you feeling inadequate or agitated, make a conscious choice to unfollow those accounts or limit your time there. Instead, dedicate that time to listening to a guided meditation, reading a chapter of an inspiring biography, or calling a supportive friend. This isn't about creating an artificial state of constant happiness, but about consciously shifting the balance of your inner content towards that which nourishes your spirit and reclaims space from negativity. Furthermore, establish regular inner sanctuary moments throughout your day. These are brief periods where you intentionally disconnect from external demands and reconnect with your inner self. This could be as simple as taking 5 minutes between tasks to close your eyes and focus on your breath, stepping outside for a few moments of fresh air and quiet observation, or mindfully savoring a cup of tea without distractions. These small rituals create pockets of peace and help to reinforce the boundary between your inner world and the often chaotic external world. For example, if you work in a stressful environment, you might set a reminder to take a 2-minute breathing break every hour just to recenter yourself and clear any accumulated mental clutter. These practices, though small, are cumulative in their effect, gradually strengthening your ability to maintain inner calm and clarity regardless of external pressures. They are acts of consciously tending to your inner garden, ensuring it remains a place of refuge and strength. Finally, practice radical self-compassion as you do this work. Reclaiming inner emotional space, especially after prolonged exposure to toxicity, is a journey, not a destination, and there will be days when it feels harder than others. There will be times when old thoughts or feelings resurface. On these occasions, meet yourself with kindness and understanding, not judgment. Remind yourself that you are healing, and that healing is not linear. If you find your inner space feeling cluttered again, simply acknowledge it without self-criticism and gently re-engage with your clearing and nurturing practices. Treating yourself with compassion creates an inner environment where it feels safe to explore difficult emotions and to let go of what no longer serves you. This gentle, persistent effort is what ultimately transforms your inner world into a resilient and spacious sanctuary. With a clearer, more spacious inner emotional landscape, and with robust boundaries in place, you are far better equipped to address the core attachments themselves. Sometimes, despite our best efforts to heal within a dynamic, the healthiest and most empowering step is to loosen or even sever the ties that bind us to persistent toxicity. This is often the most challenging part of the journey, requiring immense courage and strength. Our final main chapter will focus on letting go with strength. We will explore the difficult but often necessary process of detaching from toxic bonds, whether that means emotional detachment while maintaining contact or physical separation, and how to navigate this profound transition with self-compassion, wisdom, and a clear vision for your future. Remember to subscribe to Stealth Psychology, give this video a like, and comment with your personal opinions or suggestions for channel development. Chapter 6. Letting Go with Strength. What if the most profound act of self-love and healing you could undertake involves loosening your grip, or even walking away from, a relationship that has consistently brought you pain, despite the history, the love that once was, or the societal pressure to maintain the tie? Imagine the courage it takes to acknowledge that some bonds, no matter how deeply entrenched or significant they once were, are fundamentally incompatible with your well-being and growth, and to then choose a path of deliberate detachment, not out of malice, but out of an unwavering commitment to your own emotional survival and future happiness. This decision to let go is often the most daunting and emotionally charged phase in healing from toxic attachments. The problem is that letting go of a significant, albeit toxic bond can feel like a monumental loss, triggering immense grief, guilt, fear of the unknown, and even a crisis of identity. We may be plagued by what-ifs, by the hope that the other person will change, or by the belief that we are somehow failing if we cannot fix the relationship. Societal expectations, particularly around family or long-term partnerships, can add another layer of pressure, making us feel ashamed or selfish for considering detachment. The pain of the attachment becomes enmeshed with the pain of potentially ending it, creating a paralyzing internal conflict. The transformative solution lies in reframing letting go not as an act of failure or abandonment, but as an act of profound strength, self-preservation, and courageous self-affirmation. It is the ultimate declaration that you value your well-being enough to release what consistently harms it. The core idea is that true strength isn't always found in holding on tighter, but sometimes in having the wisdom and courage to release your grip, allowing yourself and perhaps even the other person to move towards a healthier, albeit separate, future. The immense benefit of this difficult choice is the potential for unparalleled personal growth, peace, and the creation of space for genuinely nurturing connections to enter your life. Picture yourself stepping out from under a perpetually stormy cloud into the clear, open sky of your own making, feeling lighter, freer, and more authentically yourself than you have in years. This is the liberation that letting go with strength can offer, a pathway to a future defined by your own terms, not by the constraints of a damaging bond. To begin the process of letting go with strength, the first essential step is to achieve radical clarity and acceptance about the nature of the toxic attachment and its impact on you. This means looking at the relationship with unflinching honesty, acknowledging the patterns of harm, the unmet needs, and the emotional toll it has taken, without minimizing, excusing, or hoping for a miraculous transformation in the other person that has never materialized. Review what you've learned in previous chapters, the signs of the toxic attachment, the specific pain of proximity you endured, and the stuck patterns you identified. For example, if you've recognized that a lifelong friendship consistently involves your friend devaluing your achievements and dominating every conversation, and your attempts to set boundaries have been repeatedly dismissed, radical clarity means accepting that this is the ingrained dynamic of the friendship, and it is unlikely to change without a fundamental shift in your friend that you cannot control. This clear seeing, devoid of wishful thinking, provides the firm ground upon which the decision to let go can be made. It's about saying, I see this for what it is, and I accept that it is harming me. Once clarity is achieved, the next principle is to consciously and compassionately grieve the loss. Letting go of any significant relationship, even a toxic one, involves real loss. The loss of the good parts, however infrequent, the loss of the dream of what the relationship could have been, the loss of shared history, or the loss of a role you played. Allow yourself to feel the sadness, the anger, the confusion, and any other emotions that arise. This grief is a natural and necessary part of the healing process. Suppressing it will only prolong the pain. For instance, deciding to limit contact with a difficult parent might bring up deep sadness for the nurturing parental relationship you always craved but never received. Allow yourself to mourn that unmet need. Journal about your feelings, talk to a trusted friend or therapist, or find creative outlets for your grief. Understanding that this grief is a testament to your capacity to care, even in difficult circumstances, can help you move through it with greater self-compassion. It is not a sign of weakness, but of your humanity. A third vital insight is to define what letting go means for you in this specific situation. It doesn't always mean complete physical separation or a dramatic goodbye forever, though sometimes it does. It can mean emotional detachment, where you consciously withdraw your emotional investment and stop expecting the other person to meet needs they are incapable of or unwilling to meet. It can mean creating significant physical distance, limiting contact to superficial or necessary interactions, or in some cases, choosing no contact at all. For example, with a manipulative ex-partner with whom you share children, letting go might mean limiting communication strictly to co-parenting logistics via email, refusing to get drawn into old emotional battles, and emotionally disengaging from their attempts to provoke you. For a toxic friendship, it might mean allowing the friendship to naturally fade by not initiating contact and politely declining invitations, or it could involve a more direct conversation stating your need for space. The key is to choose the level of detachment that best protects your well-being and allows you to heal. understanding that this may also evolve over time. Furthermore, as you create distance, focus on reinvesting your energy into yourself and into building healthy reciprocal relationships. Letting go of a toxic attachment creates a void, and it's important to consciously fill that void with positive, life-affirming connections and activities. Reconnect with supportive friends, pursue hobbies that bring you joy, focus on your personal or professional goals, and practice rigorous self-care. For instance, if you've spent years entangled in a draining family dynamic, redirect that energy towards nurturing friendships that leave you feeling uplifted, or invest time in a creative project you've always wanted to pursue. This proactive redirection of energy not only helps to manage the feelings of loss, but also actively builds a new, healthier reality for yourself. It's about turning your focus from what you are losing to what you are gaining: peace, freedom, and the opportunity for genuine connection. This is where you begin to build a life that truly reflects your authentic self, free from the shadows of past toxicity. Finally, anchor yourself in your strength and resilience. The act of letting go, in whatever form it takes, requires immense courage. Acknowledge and honor that strength within yourself. Remind yourself of all the challenges you have already overcome and your innate capacity to heal and grow. There will be moments of doubt, loneliness, or a temptation to revert to old patterns. In these moments, reconnect with your reasons for letting go, revisit the clarity you gained about the toxicity of the bond, and reaffirm your commitment to your own well-being. Create affirmations that support your decision, such as, "I am strong and capable of creating a joyful life," or "I choose peace and health for myself." Surround yourself with sources of inspiration and support. This journey of letting go is perhaps the ultimate act of reclaiming your power and choosing a life of emotional integrity. Letting go with strength is not about erasing the past, but about learning from it and refusing to allow it to dictate your future. It is a courageous choice to step out of the shadows of painful attachments and into the light of your own potential. It is the final, powerful assertion that your peace, your growth, and your happiness are non-negotiable. By recognizing the toxicity, understanding its deep wounds, identifying the stuck patterns, building healing boundaries, reclaiming your inner emotional sanctuary, and finally, finding the strength to let go of what consistently harms you, you have undertaken a profound journey of self-recovery and empowerment. The path ahead is one of continued healing and the exciting possibility of building connections that truly honor and uplift your spirit. You have faced the pain of proximity and chosen the path of profound self-respect, and that is a victory that resonates through every aspect of your being, paving the way for a future filled with authentic joy and meaningful connection. This voyage through the often turbulent waters of toxic emotional bonds has been a testament to the human spirit's capacity for healing and growth. We began by courageously recognizing the subtle and overt signs of toxic attachments, understanding that clarity is the first step to freedom. We then delved into the unique pain that arises from proximity to those who hurt us most, validating our experiences and acknowledging the depth of these wounds. We uncovered the recurring stuck patterns that keep us tethered to these dynamics, gaining insight into the mechanics of our own entanglement. From there, we learned to construct boundaries that not only protect, but actively heal, and to reclaim our precious inner emotional space, transforming it into a sanctuary of peace. Finally, we faced the profound challenge of letting go with strength, choosing self-preservation and the promise of a healthier future. This journey, from recognition to release, is the ultimate act of self-love, paving the way for authentic connections and a life lived in alignment with your deepest well-being. Thank you for sharing this time with us at Stealth Psychology. We trust that these insights will empower you on your path. If this exploration has resonated with you, please consider liking this video, sharing your reflections in the comments, and subscribing for more content dedicated to your emotional strength and personal growth.